So, hello all. In the previous class, we discussed about the meaning of judicial review, and we compared the American judiciary with the Indian judiciary. Right now, I will discuss the constitutional provisions for judicial review. So, though the phrase judicial review has nowhere been used in the Constitution, the provisions of several articles explicitly confer the power of judicial review on the Supreme Court and the High Courts, right? That means, the phrase called judicial review hasn't been mentioned in any part of the Constitution. However, some provisions of the Constitution explicitly talks about the judicial review. They are Article 13. Article 13 declares that all laws that are inconsistent with or in derogation of the fundamental rights shall be null and void. That means, by using Article 13, the judiciary can examine the laws made by the legislature or orders issued by the executive, whether they are within the limits of the Constitution or not. So that means Article 13 directly or indirectly gives the power of judicial review to the courts. Next, Article 32. And Article 32, right to constitutional remedies. Yes, we already discussed about it. Okay, Article 32 guarantees the right to move the Supreme Court for the enforcement of the fundamental rights and empowers the Supreme Court to issue directions or orders, writs for that purposes. We know that Article 32 empowers the Supreme Court to issue writs like habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, quo warranto, prohibition, etc. Right? And Article 131 provides for the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in center state and interstate disputes. We already discussed about this. Article 31 gives exclusive original jurisdiction to the Supreme Court to resolve the disputes, particularly federal disputes. Okay, that means by using Article 131, the Supreme Court can review the laws made by the central government or the state governments, which are the grounds of conflict between the two, right? Yes. And Article 132 provides for the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in constitutional cases. We already discussed that appellate jurisdiction comprises constitutional cases, criminal cases, and civil cases, and appeal by special leave. Yes or no? Right. And Article 133 provides for the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in civil cases, and Article 134 in criminal cases, and Article 134A deals with the certificate for appeal to the Supreme Court from the High Courts. You got the point, right? And Article 135 empowers the Supreme Court to exercise the jurisdiction and powers of the federal court under any pre-constitutional law. Okay, this Article 135 talks about laws which were there prior to the Constitution, prior to the enforcement of Constitution. Issues regarding such type of laws are dealt under Article 135, right? And Article 136, it is the most important article. Why it is the most important article? Because this article talks about the special leave, meaning Supreme Court can give a chance for an appellant to appeal against judgment, any judgment given by the judiciary, given by the High Courts or any other court within the territory of India, except the military courts or military tribunals. Okay, so that's why the special leave is considered as a most powerful provision of the Supreme Court, right? And Article 143 authorizes the President to seek the opinion of the Supreme Court on any question of law or fact and on any pre-constitutional legal matters. And we discussed about the advisory jurisdiction of the President in our previous class. So if you want, go and you can visit that previous lecture and watch that. And Article 226 empowers the High Courts to issue directions or orders or writs for the enforcement of the fundamental rights and for any other purposes. I discussed about Article 226. See, Under Article 32, the Supreme Court is empowered to issue the writs. It is also called as writ jurisdiction. However, writ jurisdiction is not exclusive original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. It is just the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. It is not exclusive. Meaning, under Article 226, the High Court is empowered to issue writ jurisdiction in the matters of enforcing fundamental rights as well as for other legal purposes. Meaning, the writ jurisdiction of the High Court is wider than the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. However, the Parliament can enhance the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court with respect to issuing writs, right? So the main objective of the writ jurisdiction or issuing the writs is to enforce the fundamental rights. Okay, so dear students, all these articles or all these provisions in the Constitution ensures the process called judicial review. Okay. Now we will see the scope of judicial review. What is the meaning of scope of judicial review? Scope means limits. So up to what extent the judicial review can be done, or on what grounds the judicial review is done, right? So judicial review is nothing but it is the process through which constitutional validity of a legislative enactment or an executive order can be challenged in the Supreme Court or in the High Courts. Okay, am I clear? That is the meaning of judicial review or the scope of judicial review. So scope of judicial review means on what grounds the judicial review can be initiated, okay, or on what grounds the constitutional validity of a legislative enactment can be examined. Okay, that is the scope of judicial review. So the limits of the judicial review are three. Okay, that means judicial review can be initiated only on these three grounds. One is when the law infringes the fundamental rights, or when the law is outside the competence of the authority which has framed it. What is the meaning of this? Competence of the authority means, if a law is framed by an authority, the question is whether that authority is given the power, or whether that authority has the right to frame the law or not, is called as competence of the authority. So based on this ground, the judicial review can be initiated. And the last ground is the law is repugnant to the constitutional provisions. Repugnant means violates, violating or infringing, etc. Right? So based on these three grounds, the judicial review can be initiated. You have to observe one thing. On the ground of reasonability, whether the law is reasonable or not, or what are the implications of the law, or what are the consequences of the law, cannot be examined under the judicial review, because we follow procedure established by the law. I will discuss in a few minutes, right? So that means on the grounds of reasonability or on the grounds of implications of the law, cannot be or the judicial review cannot be initiated, right? So on the grounds of reasonability and on the grounds of consequences of the law, the judicial review cannot be initiated. The judicial review can be initiated only on the grounds of infringing the fundamental rights, or outside the competence of the authority which has framed it, or the repugnant to the constitutional provisions. So only on these three grounds the judicial review can be initiated. That's why I said in my previous discussion that the judicial review of Indian Supreme Court is narrower than the judicial review of American Supreme Court, because the American Supreme Court can conduct judicial review based on the grounds of reasonability as well as based on the grounds of implications of the laws made by the legislature. Okay, so from the above it is clear that the scope of judicial review in India is narrower than what exists in the USA. Okay, though the American Constitution does not explicitly mention the concept of judicial review in any of its provisions, right? This is because the American Constitution provides for due process of law against that of procedure established by the law, which is contained in the Indian Constitution, right? Now we will discuss the meaning of procedure established by the law and the due process of law. So procedure established by the law means you have to remember one thing. So procedure established by the law means it is the principle or it is the doctrine based on which the judicial review is conducted in India. So procedure established by the law is a doctrine or a principle based on which the judicial review is conducted, right? So procedure established by the law means Supreme Court, while determining the constitutionality of a law, right, examines only one question, one substantive question, that is whether the law is within the powers of the authority concerned or not. It is not expected to go into the question of its reasonableness, suitability, or policy implications. Did you get the point? See, for example, dispute regarding a law went to Supreme Court or any other court. The first thing the court does is it looks after the authority which made that law. That means whether the authority is competent enough to make that law or not. It doesn't question the reasonability behind that law. Other way around. If a appellant appeal to the court with respect to infringement of his or her rights, then the judiciary examines whether the authority concerned has followed the provisions which are mentioned in the law concerned to take back the rights of the appellant. Am I clear? Okay. So in this way, the judiciary does not question the reasonability of the law. It just examines whether the authority concerned is competent enough to enforce an order or to enforce the law. And also it examines whether the authority concerned is acting according to the provisions of the law or not. Okay? That is the meaning of procedure established by the law. Okay? So the judiciary just examines the procedure. It doesn't examine the reasonability of that law or the implications of that law. So that is called procedure established by the law. Whereas under due process of law, the Supreme Court can grant protection to the rights of its citizens. It can declare laws violative of these rights void not only on substantive grounds of being unlawful but also on procedural grounds of being unreasonable. See, simply due process of law is equals to procedure established by the law plus reasonability. Did you understand? That means by using due process of law, the judicial review examines whether the procedure followed is legal or illegal, and also whether that law is reasonable or not. Is that law infringing the rights of the citizens or not? And what are the implications of law? All these aspects are considered while reviewing the law or while conducting the judicial review. So therefore, the scope of judicial review based on due process of law is wider than the scope of judicial review based on procedure established by the law. Okay. Are you able to follow? Did you understand the difference between procedure established by the law and due process of law? Okay, to summarize, procedure established by the law means it is a doctrine or a principle based on which the judicial review is performed. Okay, and due process of law means it is also a doctrine or a principle on which the judicial review is performed. Okay, so far as procedure established by the law is concerned, in this case, the judicial review is confined to whether the authority concerned is competent enough to enforce law, law concerned or not, or whether the authority concerned has followed the terms and conditions as prescribed by the law concerned or not. Okay, so that is called procedure established by the law. That is called judicial review based on procedure established by the law. Whereas judicial review based on the due process of law means whether the authority is competent enough to issue the law concerned or not, and also whether such law is infringing the rights of the citizens or not, is also examined under due process of law. Okay, so if you have any doubts in this regard, please let me know. Okay, I have provided my mail ID. You can contact me. Okay, I will give you more explanation if you need such. Okay, right. Now we will see the judicial review of the 9th schedule. And we do know that 9th schedule, initially the Constitution of India has only 8 schedules. Through the first Constitutional Amendment Act, 9th schedule has been added to the Indian Constitution. Okay, and the objective of 9th schedule is, as we know that after independence, the government of India initiated the land reforms, and during that period, that means prior to 1970s, Article 31, that means right to property, had been the fundamental right. Okay, and there was a conflict between this Article 31 and the laws or the land reforms, because land reforms took away the property rights of jamindars and many other landlords. So they moved to the courts to enforce their fundamental right called right to property. Okay, so to come out of the situation, the Parliament had enforced the first constitutional amendment. Okay, this amendment brought changes to the Article 31 by introducing the Article 31B and also introducing 9th schedule. Okay, so whichever the law that is kept under 9th schedule cannot be examined by using the power called judicial review. That means 9th schedule provides an immunity to the laws from judicial review. Did you understand? Right? So, okay. So, Article 31B saves the acts and regulations included in the 9th schedule from being challenged and invalidated on the grounds of contravention of any of the fundamental rights. Right? And Article 31B, along with the 9th schedule, was added by the first Constitutional Amendment Act of 1951. I already told you the first Constitutional Amendment Act has been initiated in order to ease the process of implementing the land reforms, because right to property had been the fundamental right prior to 1970s. Okay, and it had been the main hurdle for the parliament to implement the land reforms. Okay, right. And however, in a significant judgment delivered in I.R. Coelho case in 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that there could not be any blanket immunity from judicial review of laws included in the 9th schedule, right? That means the court held that, and of course in Keshwananda Bharati case, in many other cases like Minerva Mills case, the Supreme Court of India held that judicial review is the basic structure or the basic feature of the constitution, and it cannot be taken back by an amendment. Okay, and this judgment again reasserted and reaffirmed in I.R. Coelho case. In this case, Supreme Court held that the laws under the acts under 9th schedule of the constitution can also be taken under the purview of judicial review, right? Okay, in this judgment, Supreme Court held that the laws placed under the 9th schedule after April 24th, 1973. That means this is the day of the verdict of Keshwananda Bharati case. Of course, in this judgment, Supreme Court introduced the concept of basic structure. Okay, in I.R. Coelho case, Supreme Court said that the laws under the 9th schedule can be challenged in the court about their constitutionality. Okay, and the laws which are inserted in the 9th schedule before April 24, 1973 cannot be challenged in the judiciary, right? Only the laws which are inserted after April 24, 1973 can be challenged on the grounds of violation of Article 14, 15, 19, 21, and also on the grounds of violating basic structure of the constitution. Okay, right? So dear students, with this we have completed the meaning of judicial review, the due process of law, and the meaning of procedure established by the law, and judicial review of 9th schedule. Okay, in the next class we will discuss about the judicial activism and judicial overreach, and the relation between judicial activism and judicial review. Okay, right. Thank you.